Hello, fellow map makers. Welcome to tonight's live map making session. Hope the sound is alright. My bars seem to indicate it is. If not, please let me know so I can fix things here. Alright, as you can see, no cat so far during the live stream. She's still curled up in the chair next door in the next room, so she might stop by later. I don't know. Good. First off, my apologies for cancelling last week's mapping session. Thunderstorms were rolling in. In the end, they didn't turn out to be bad at all, really, but you never know, and I prefer to have my computer shut off when lightning strikes around, because in the past I've already had a damaged CPU from lightning spikes in the net, so I try to avoid this as much as possible these days. And but tonight we are back to the topic. I was planning to do last week the second part of my new city style mini-series, and tonight we're gonna take a look at setting the city designer specific details for a mapping style, and then setting up the actual template file and the other stuff that needs to be in there for the new map wizard. And here comes the cat, as promised and as expected. As soon as I start talking, she's checking up on me. Hi there, little Asa. Alright, so as usual, if you've got any questions during the session, do post them in the chat. There's enough people there who will be happy to help out. And if possible, I show stuff on screen and can demonstrate the answers to any questions as I go along. With that, let's start back on our current project on the new city style. You do see the map here on screen, an older map of mine which I want to recreate as a new style. Basically set up everything I can create other maps like this easily and as quickly as possible. And for that we do have set up a drawing style already. Here the city vector DSA style. Set up some drawing tools for that, and now we want to take a look at setting up house styles and street settings for our map and load these with the template. So let's have a look at what we are going to recreate. And here's basically the house styles. The style we have uses mostly just very simple vector house shapes without any ornaments or roof patterns or anything. And that's the style I want to recreate. For that, first off, we do need a house setting that lets us draw houses in this style. For this, let's click on the house command here. First off, this brings up the house, the inside building dialog, and that contains a variety of different house styles in here, as you can see. And we need to set up one of these that creates a house like this. For this, let's have a look. It's always best to start with something similar. And if I take a look down here, or actually for the city designer styles, the vector styles will be fairly similar. The bitmap styles A and B are fairly detailed and not what we want to do from the start. But if I take a look here at the CD3C style, that's a vector drawing style, and that is fairly similar. So let's have a look and pick up perhaps the default style, though that is already has a roof pattern in there. And now we're back to the B styles. This looks pretty similar, so let's use this as a basis. And then we're going to click on the settings button here to go to the house settings. And this looks pretty complicated, but we'll go through the stuff one by one. And let's have a look here. So that's the new style. The style is selected, so we want a new one. And for that, we are just going to go for a new name. And we call this city vector DSA. So we're going to use the DSA as the start for the names in here. And we're going to do the first of our house styles for the setting and just call it DSA default. Here we are. And for the house style, I don't want to use the, actually this, it's a bit, this is the house setting I've been saying. The house style is the style that sets up the edge and roof fills and stuff. And for that, we're simply going to use an existing one. And because there's a simple blank one here, CD3 blank. That's the one I wanted to use, and use this as the basis that makes sure our outlines are just straight ones and not tapered or indented for roof tiles or something like that. We are going to use a CD3 style. So what's the difference? We could also set up CD Pro. You see it looks slightly different. That's because the CD Pro styles can't do the automated sunlight shading that the CD3 styles do, where the shadows will depend on the direction of our sun we set in the map and can dynamically change as we change that direction. So we're going to use one of the new ones. Already got the first question from Sue. What's the difference between blank and default styles? Actually, it's probably the same. Default is probably also just a simple blank style. I just want to use a one that says blank in the name to be sure that actually nothing special is set up for that style and other people can see that it's meant to be blank. It's a bit more telling in the name than just using the default. Alright, so let's see for the base color of our roof. That's the roof color here. We said we do use a solid fill style. You could set bitmap fill textures in here if you're using textured roofs, but we're going to go for a color style, and I want to make it a little bit brighter than the style here. As you can see, the red in my map is a bit brighter than the one here. So we're going to go with a 166 as our, it might be a bit too bright, perhaps we should take the step in between, the 165, here we go. That looks pretty perfect, so we're going to use that. The align checkbox is only necessary if you're using a bitmap texture, because that determines whether the texture is going to be aligned or not. For solid fill style, that you can leave that unchecked. We are also not, for the default state, make this vari color. The roof options are fine for the basics here. Or actually, that's the width of the middle section or the extending sections on the sides if you're using this shape. And this is the width of the outline on a flat roof building. And since we are setting up a metric style, we might actually want to make this smaller. Basically use 30% of this because that's going to look more natural. So we're going to use 30 and 1.5 for these. We do not want a roof ridge on the building. As you can see, we've just got the simple black line in these buildings. And here we go. And although I'm thinking perhaps if I compare this to these houses, the width here on the sides is a bit small perhaps. I think I used that same setting on the style previously, so for now we're just going to use the ones that we had here. And see, we can always change this later if something is off. So we disabled the roof ridge. This is basically for how strong is the shading in the roof. See, if you make the roof steep, the shading is much darker. Shallow, it's going to be lighter. and flat. It's not gonna do any shading at all. So we're gonna keep with the normal roof pitch. And then we do not want any roof hatching. As you can see, if we use that, we get this hatching in there, which is nice, but just not what I want for this specific style. I do want outline on all my shapes. I could leave off the interior lines like this. That would make an interesting look, but not the one I want for this. Also, ridges should be outlined, flat roofs, and the exterior anyway. But I do want to make this a bit wider, because from the outside I don't want just a simple line, I do want a little bit of a wide line. So I'm gonna put 0.1 or perhaps 0.5. We're gonna check this in a second. Let's use 2.25 for the moment, and this is about what I want. Now I'm going to draw a house shape to compare that to my existing ones in here. But first I'm going to resave this as the DSA default, and then I'm going to do OK and insert a house. And then I'm just going to simply draw a house shape here and have a look. And as you can see, my outline is a little bit too thick. This is not quite what I wanted to, so I'm going to erase this house with the undo function, go back in, go to the settings again, and actually going to load my newly created setting and make this 0.1. Okay. And then I'm going to insert this one again. And that's much better. And if we compare this, this is perfectly fine. And I'm going to use this setting. See, the gables are the same width. The lines in the middle are fine. This might be a touch wider there, the outline, but it's fine for my purposes. So I'm going to undo this, go back into my settings. And the only thing that confuses me a bit, why it always reloads the old one, but no matter, we go back into this one here. Okay, so if that's fine. I did forget to save, so I do need to put the 0.1 in here again. Save the setting and press OK. And let's also try a little different shape to see just whether it works correctly. So one house like this, and then perhaps an extension to the house. Wrong button click point within the house, house edge, distance, and there we are. And this looks great. So we've got the setting down for the house, and let's undo this, and we've got that saved. We can quite easily create little variations of this. For example, something I like to do is do a varicolor version. So just in case I do want to sprinkle in a few houses in a different style, I can always use varicolor. And there, no, I forgot one thing. I wanted to, we don't have any roof ridges here at the moment, so the roof ridge color does not really matter, but I do want to change it just in case we do add roof ridges at some point, and I wanted it to be black like the other, just squarely black like the other lines. So that's something I wanted to save. Here we go. Now let's say I want to create a varicolor version, then I just rename or save this under a different name, DSA varicolor. The only change I do at this point is I put the check mark here for the roof color as varicolor. Save this again. And if I insert this now as a house, let's do a simple one here. Insert and choose a brown. There we are, we've got the same setting with the house width line and everything, just the roof color is different. So much for that. And one more setting I want to set up is the tent style. I do have, this is a tent camp, and I want to add this as a style for the buildings as well. So I'm going to go into settings again, to load the default, save this as just tents, and set the appropriate color for that. This I'm just going to use the color 19 as the base. There we are. And everything else can stay the same. There we go. And there is our... And then if you scroll down here, I think I know why we've always went back to the city designer setting, because this is the house setting I still had selected in here. To actually change that, I need to pick the house setting in here. There we go. And now if you go into the settings for this, this will bring this up by default. Yes, that's why it always showed up with the older setting there when I loaded up the dialog. So much for that. And let's just, say default is our name. But how do we set this as the default when we load up the new map? For style, we need to set this when the new map is created, or when we load up a map in that style. We always want, if we then click the house button, that to be the selected house setting. And that is some of the things we set in the on open macro. So if we go into map nodes, we do have the on new macro and the on open macro. And here we're gonna take a look into this on open, and there we have got a command to load a house setting. House load is the setting. Currently it just loads a City Designer 3A setting, and we need to change this to DSA default. We can actually, I can just do the same for the street. You can see above that street load is the same for the street settings, which we'll do in a second. We haven't set that yet, but I can already put in the name for that, and just remember to set the setting appropriately. What we did already last time is we set the default catalog to load when we started the map. We did that last time already, and now we've set all the settings here that we need. Catalog settings for City Designer is fine. We don't need our own catalog setting for our new style in City Designer, because we just have one catalog for this style, and the city menu gets loaded when the map starts. So even if the last thing you had open was an overland map, if you then load the city map, it will load up the city interface for you. And I'm going to copy all this thing, because I also want to do the same thing in the on new macro. The on new macro is the macro that gets executed when you start a new style from the new map wizard. And while we don't have a template set up for that yet, we will hopefully today. And so we do need the same macro in there. The same happens when we start a new map. Right, so that's already an important step for setting up our template. All right, and then next up, as promised, I want to take a look at the street settings. So if I right click this, I bring up our street settings here. These are even more complicated than the house settings, so please bear with me, but the house commands, the city commands are very powerful and do need a little bit of proper setup if you want to use them. So let's have a look. And we are saying we're using metric template here basically. And so we want to use one of the metric settings as the basis. And let's have a look. And I do have, as you can see, the city designer don't have separate metric settings, which is a bit of an oversight back then, which needs to be fixed at some point, but we do have settings here for the metric version. So we have a default city style from Symbol Set 5, but we could also use one of the annual styles. We've got quite a few here. We should also have some just metric styles here, as you can see. Various versions, for example, the 177 style. Let's take this as a default. And as previously, we're going to save this as the name we set in the settings in the open macro. This not city, but default. Here we go. So what do we have here? We do have random. Do we want random house types, or all houses are the same? Naturally, we do not for this one to be all houses the same. That's too boring and more suited to science fantasy or science fiction city. We do want some variation. And here in these boxes we can set what percentage of house shapes should be used. And so if we do this, we have a 50% chance of having houses that are aligned parallel to the street and have this basic shape. 30% same shape, but aligned vertically to the street. 15% with the L-shaped houses, and then 3 and 2% for more complex shapes, which is fine by me here at the moment. And I also can set how I want to my command to work. Do I want to set the house, select the side of the house? Do I want it on the left side of the road? On the right side of the road? So both sides works as well. But I really want to have fine controls, and so I want to be able to select the side of the street each time I use the command. Then I can set what type of houses I want. The one with the gables, or just the X form, the flat roofs, or the simple shapes. And for this style, we're mostly working with the gabled roofs, so we're going to use that. Drawing gardens is possible. That will draw an outline around the buildings, but it's not something I want in this style at the moment. A line to the road, that means we get the fronts are all parallel to the street. If not, we'll just have the center of the building aligned with the street, and the fronts will vary in how far away they are from the street. So let's keep the line to road here at the moment. And then we do have, I'm going to save this at the moment, we have more settings, and we have to want to select the house setting here we're using for this style. So this is obviously not the correct one. It's a default, there we are. And okay. Why does this preview not change? I think I know why. This is just to get into the house settings. Which settings we actually use is in this dialog. I could use the current selected house settings, which works quite nicely for this style because we're using most of the ones. The houses are mostly the same. We're using just the one style. across all the city. I could all vary between different house settings. I could here go in and say I want the majority to be in the DSA default style, but then also some in the varicolour style we had. Like here 40%, or let's say 70% and 30%, like that, or even 80-20. And then we do set the settings for the house here. How large are they? How far away from the street and everything. So let's have a quick check first and how this works. But this is just an example here. I could save this as a different street setting, but for now I just want the current setting for my houses. Or actually know what I'm going to do to just make sure we're always using our default house style with the default street setting. We're just going to use 100% always this house setting with the road. So let's click OK and just give this a quick try how this looks. It's probably not correct yet. Let's go zoom out a bit so we can see stuff. And yeah, this command for this to work, we then need to left click the random street button. Oh, let's see the size could be a bit larger. And but the alignment is nice, the shapes are good. Let's have a look that we make this a bit larger. That we're going to go in the street settings again, and we're going to start with a bit of a lower size, with a higher minimum size, so 5 meters minimum and max 10 for the width. Then for the length we need to be a bit higher than that, so 10.5, because it's basically the width is always the smaller side defined here of the house, that way. The minimum house length must be higher than the max house width in the setting. So I'm going to use 11 and a max width of 20. And I don't want that much width between the houses. Could even be a bit smaller than the width we had previously. And then we need to see, not entirely sure how wide this street must be. Let's have a quick look. For that we'll need to set this up with the street actually. Distance from center of the road. Let's keep it like this for the moment. Yeah, we do get an error message. The street width has to be greater than the max house length. Okay. So we know this. So we're gonna the max house length is 20, so let's do 21 as the street width. Alright. And let's do OK and draw a little street to start with. Oh, why is it not happening? What am I doing here? Default road. Let's do like this. Okay. Am I perhaps something is incorrectly set up with the map border here? So let's have a quick look and see if we uncheck the restrict to map border, whether the command then works better. Yeah, it does. And now let's add a street along here. That's quite nice from the size here. Matching there could be a bit smaller maximum? No, I think it's actually quite good. They could just be, they're very wide compared to the width here, or some of them are, so perhaps we might want to change the ratio a bit. So let's go into the street settings again. And let's go a bit higher with the max width, so 12, and start at 13th with the minimum house length. So you can see that makes them a little bit bulkier and not so wide and thin. And quick check. Perhaps a little bit too large compared to the rest, especially if I look at the smaller houses here. So let's make the max size a little bit smaller. So let's just do 16 instead, and we can then also make the street width smaller, 17. Distance between the houses seems to be good. Yeah, and I think that's quite nice. That looks good. If I put another house on that size. That's for larger buildings. I would probably also create a street that has smaller settings. But that's fine for the moment. So let's undo that. Make sure we have this saved. Yeah, and default, and we already have the settings set in our on open and our new macro, so this will be the default setting that gets loaded when we start a new map in this style. All right, so that's that part of the session. I've set up my street and house settings for the for my new style. So how do I, when I've set that in my own open and on new macros, and next, how do I get the actual template so I can put in a map in that list in the new map wizard, like the one here. If I click new, save my changes, go to cities. I want to be able to pick my city here from this list, like the city basic or the city theory vector style. You can see I've already actually used a bit of this map as an example for vector city in this list. So how do I set this up? Well, first we need to save our map as a template, and I need to work a little bit of that, and so I'm not going to use the, I do have a file type for templates that will save this as a not FCW but as an FCT map. Basically the same thing, just with a different extension, so Campaign Codifier can tell them apart. But I'm not going to do that right away to start with. I'm just going to name this template so I can meddle around with it and have a saved version. And what do I do? Basically, first off, I need to get rid of all the extra stuff that's not going to be in the template. I just need to leave the basic things in there. All right, so here we go. I'm gonna erase this so you can see I do have an yes. I'm also gonna erase my grid and everything here in the center of the map. Erase any text and symbols. Oops. Yeah, I've got a question from Bill. Many cities have buildings of various styles immediately adjacent with no space. How do you do that? Well, that's something the street command can't do that well automatically. You can set a very small distance, but it will not usually look that good, especially if you don't have a straight road. I can show that a bit in a moment. What you need to do, you need to build blocks like that by hand by using the house command and using the on modifier and endpoint modifiers to attach the houses to each other. I'll show you in a bit. So let's get rid of that. Erase layer. Quite a few things actually hidden here because I had set up several things in this map to be shown, and because I've saved this a new map, I can just safely erase all of this without having fear of destroying my work, because that's safely saved in a different map. All layers shown, all about the sheets, everything is showing all right. So let's have a quick look how large my map here. Actually, I could probably do that with the resize drawing area. Okay, we don't have a map border now here on the map. That's one of the faults, probably because we did not because the road tool did not work unless we uncheck the restrict to map border option. All right, so we do have to set up from scratch everything, which is fine. I'm just gonna delete everything and I'm gonna go from scratch. First off, I want a background on the map like this, and it's gonna go on the layer background. We want a solid color. And what color do we want? We could go with a watercolor as the background, but for cities I normally rather start with a green grass color. So let's go for the 11716 or the 18. No, let's go for the 118 color to start with. And I'm going to just draw a rectangle on that layer and sheet with 00 as the origin, and then 1000 by 800 meters in this case for our default size of templates. This is just the base we've decided on at some point and from which everything is usually calculated. Okay, so that's just the background. We do need a map border entity that defines the extension of the map actually, and for that we usually use the color 1, and that goes on the layer map border. So campaign cutoff actually knows it's meant to be the map border. I'm going to keep it on the background sheet here because I want it to be the very first thing in the map. So and it's gonna be a hollow fill style, and I'm just gonna draw it across the same shape and then send it to the back. Prior, do it, and now it's in the back. And then I also want a map border, a bit of just a visual reminder on the map border sheet, and that's going to be black. This is going to be the front of most other things, and I'm going to draw it the same way, and this is going to stay in front. And so this is just the basic simple outline. What I can also add at this point is the screen that screens off any symbols that extend beyond the border. This is done with the color command automatically, and it's gonna go around the map border, and I can set the color width, which I think I'm gonna do in this point. I'm just gonna set it to 40. And you're gonna see that if you then zoom out, it's not visible because they're the same color as the screen in the window color. If you change the window color to something else, you'll be able to see our screen entity here that hides everything. We can extend that later or redo it, and I just like to have it on the starting map. So I'm going to go back to window color white. Yeah, yeah. As Quentin says, doing with large cities, the doing building by building can get tedious. That's I wanted to show you how to build a medieval-like city block with the tools here, and you'll see if you do that over a large city, it takes a while. I've done that in the past, but it does require some work. So what you're doing, let's say I've got a few roads here, 5 meter wide road, and then a smaller one that basically goes around the block, which doesn't need to be all straight and even like this. And now I want to fill this with buildings which are all adjacent to each other. And for that, I'm going to go in my house command. As you can see, my house style is still loaded. I'm going to select a little bit more complex house to start with. And then I'm just going to start by adding one of these here. One on this side. And then I'm going to do a L-shaped building here on this side. Remember, with the house tool in City Designer, you always do the long L side first, the outside basically. And now I'm gonna go in and put in some buildings to connect these. And for this I can use this free house shape here, for example. And I could also use a simpler roof shape. And then I'm just going to use the endpoint modifier F5, 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 and then an F9 here. And then I'm going to do the same here, like this. And 5, F9, F5, 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 F9, F9. And there's your city block, and you can build more like this to fill up a street. The trick is to start with some individual buildings first to lay down the foundation and then fill in the gaps with different shapes of houses. That makes it easier. I didn't leave a gap here, so I'm assuming there's some kind of archway or gate that leads into the courtyard here at some point. But of course you can also leave a gap to have an open access to the courtyard as you prefer. Alright, there we go. That's how you build up a city block. So we do have our basic default house style. What I normally want is some kind of map title and scale bar cartouche to put in the map. Because you can select these from the new map wizard to place in the map. And for that, these need to be as symbol definitions in the template. So what I usually do is I look for some existing catalogs. Let's have a look here. If I load up a catalog, the cities, and let's go and look for the City Designer 3 ones on the Vector Classic. And does that have some cartouche stuff? Miscellaneous? No. No, they are not. They don't have any. These old styles don't have the cartouches in there automatically. So what we're going to do instead, we do have some cartouches here. Let's see. That looks actually fairly good for my style. So I'm just going to repurpose this. I'm going to click this once. This means the template, the symbol definition is in the drawing style. And I'm gonna click the scale bar as well, but I'm not going to place it in the template because I just want the symbol definition in the map. So I'm going to go to symbols, symbol manager. Now I can remove all the symbols here that we don't need. There's actually a compass rose in here, so we might keep that. Oh no, it's a bit too complex for this style. I prefer this one. So I'm going to delete these, leaving me just with these two styles in here. I'm going to remain this, just a compass rose. I just want a simple name for these ones, because that way they show up more simply and more clearly in the new map wizard. So I'm just, oops, that was wrong. And I'm going to rename this to scale bar. The default scale bar in there should always be 100 feet or meter, depending on your options. See, this says feet, so we do need to change that. So I'm gonna just go in here and make this meter. Oops. Did I not click OK? There we are. That's better. Close this, and I don't need to do anything else with these unless I want to edit them, change stuff as they are. What I also want is a map title and a copyright note that I can put in there. So I could recreate these from scratch, but I should probably, because I want to use the same color and font as in the scale bar. So I'm going to go in here and use extract properties on the text. So I do have the same text set. And now I'm gonna see how my map title is best in this map. So I'm just gonna put in a text, my city, mid-center, because I don't know where the user is gonna place it, so it should be aligned to the center. This is perhaps a good size. Let's have a look, which we've got a 33 text font size here, which I've placed. So I'm gonna make this actually change text properties 30, just to have an even number. Times New Roman is a font that is available on every computer, so there's no worry there. People will not have the font I'm using extract properties. And now I'm gonna make this a symbol. So symbol, define symbol, select my text, do it, name is map title, not tile but title, there we are, send origins in the center, okay. Symbols, now I'm gonna go in the symbol manager, edit my, and now how do I make this an adjustable map title? Basically I need to place something new in there. I'm gonna erase this and under symbols define an attribute. The tag text, which is basically displayed when I place this map, is map title, or same as the prompt text. Map title is actually the internal one, and the default value is also going to be map title. Or I can just use title here, it doesn't matter. There we are. It's okay, and place it at 0.0. And let's change the attributes. Can sometimes be a bit tricky with the font. Let's have a look. Let's make sure we change the text properties here to some correct. Times New Roman. There we are. It's probably just been a display issue there, but just to make sure I have the correct font, I'm gonna set this. So, and if I now grab this and place it in the map, it will prompt me for my map title. See, that is the prompt here. And the default value, my map is, this is my map. And now I can place it in the map. There we are. Now I just want also a little copyright tag, or so I'm gonna use this, clone that, use this copyright, edit. Now this should be smaller, much smaller, because I don't want that to be as prominent as the title of my map, so I just use a height of 5. Use properties, and the text here is copyright. Prompt text is also copyright. And the default title, let's say copyright 2023 by Pro Fantasy Software. There we are. And if I place this in here, I can just leave the default text, or of course you can replace the Pro Fantasy Software with your name. And there's my copyright setting in the map. So we've set everything up what we need in the setting. There's just a few things I like to do. There's I'm gonna like to save my effect presets, all the sheet effects I've set in here. See, they are not saved under a specific name, they are just saved with the map. So I'm gonna do new, and I'm also call them city vector DSA. Save that. I do like to set the default values that everything is set to when the map starts. So roads is a good place to start, and also go on the roads layer here. Color should be the one you want to have when you set a grid from the new map wizard, because the new map wizard will be in that color. So let's do black as the default color. Fill style hollow, line style solid is fine. So everything is set as I want to, and now I just need to set this up as a template. So I'm going to do save as template, and I need to go to my program data folder, the program data C3 plus, templates, cities, and then to the wizard folder, because everything else here is fixed templates. We do want to style in the new map wizard. So we go in here, and there you can see all the different styles that are listed in there. So here's, for example, the vector shaded one, and this is, I'm going to call it city vector. This is A. Save this. But the problem is this is not quite enough yet. If I go in here, let's see what happens. If I go city, and that is, but it doesn't show a proper other image. It doesn't change the image, and there's no text here. That's because a little bit is missing. If I go in to my program data folder in the Windows Explorer, templates, cities, wizard, let's do date, no name actually, it's easier, city vector DSA. You can see every other style has also a PNG file in this with the same name and a text file with the same name, and we do need to have these in here too. Have this correctly set up. So I'm going to copy just 2 others here. Anyone will do, just something that's in the vicinity of my. Then I'm going to grab the title of the file and rename my copies. And I'm going to edit the vector text first. And here I'm going to put in unit meter for the style, and city vector DSA private of Shaman, just to remind me That is my own style I've set up for myself. Yeah, and then I do need a little preview. By sheer coincidence, I've chosen the style that has the similarly set up map already, but I can always go in, load up my city map I've created previously, erase this here, only the text, and do file, save as PNG, bit smaller, this is way too large. And just grab a bit of the map here. Wait for the export to finish. And these are always 250 by 200 pixel wide, so I'm going to use a 5 by 4 dimension and just grab a section of map and resize that to 250. Oh, that was actually resized to 2500, which is way too large. 250, grab that, put that in here so it just looks a little bit different than the other style. Reduce, save, and now if I go in here and pick a new map, cities, city vector DSA, there you can my preview and my text. And from here I can click next, set up the size of my map, 400, smaller one. If I go here, this is the cartouche, like the compass rows and the map title. I can place in the map. Okay, there's something not quite right here. I've got an error message. I probably should restart the map before I do this here. But no matter. Let's go next. I can set my map background here to different colors. Because I've chosen a solid fill style for the map background, I can simply change the color here. I can set up a grid overlay with, say, letters and numbers and a 50-foot grid, square grid. Apply, finish, and go to my videos, streams. Call this test, and there's my map with the grid set up with the defaults for this, and now I can start mapping here. This 500 by 400 is probably fairly small. It's okay for a metric map. Actually, it would be very small for a feet imperial type map, but for a metric map, it's actually, you can get a small town into that without any problems really at all. And this is how the street would look at this size, quite like I wanted it to be. And from there, I can start mapping, and perhaps I'll do a style like this in one of the next, or I use the style actually in one of the next sessions. I do want to recreate a map or two in this style anyway, and make that a demo video. We'll see. Because next week's not going to be me, next week's going to be Remy who's doing the live video because I'm away. But after that, we'll go back to, well, then we'll have the new annual issue probably. Well, we'll get back to city mapping at some point. Thank you very much for listening today. The hour is done. We've done what I was setting out to do, which is nice, and no big problems appearing on the way. And I hope you like this look into some of the intricacies of setting up a template for a city style. They are the most complex of the standard map styles to do. but I always like them and love my city mapping. So if you do as well, do enjoy your cities, set up your own styles, create some maps, share them on the web. And join us again next week for a live mapping session. All the best. Have a good night. Bye bye.